We were speaking with Temitipe Olodo, who is in the UK, talking about, he's a preventive terrorism consultant and president of Africa Security Forum. We're talking about the resurgence of attacks on some communities, as well as some abductions that we have seen in recent times. And I asked before we went on the break if what you interpret as the reason for the resurgence of these attacks. I recall that you mentioned that there was no calm initially, but it's just a matter of the fact that we were not perhaps following developments from some of these communities.
Yes, exactly. And that's the truth. The fact was that a lot of people were concentrating on the election. There was a restriction on movement of people. Students were not in school. Because we should look at the pattern. You know, if they go to schools, they either pick them from their hostels and they go away with them. They're picking them on during the daytime. The question we should be asking is, what is the police effectiveness in terms of response rate to be able to deal with it? Because these people are not coming out of the moon and then disappearing into the moon. They are moving from one location to another, and it's not like they are moving from junction A to junction B within 1 minute. They are going for a long distance, and yet we are unable to stop them. So the question then is, what kind of intervention is government putting in place, and why is it that those interventions are not working? I think that is where we need to come from in order to be able to deal with this. Because at the end of the day, if there's a kidnapping or adoption that has gone on, three questions we should ask ourselves is, these people are going to call. Who are they going to call? We've already put in a policy. A lot of Nigerians can remember the suffering they went through to be able to get their names, to be able to have it linked. Yet these people are still making phone calls in this country. We were just talking before I joined the conversation, you were talking about either telephone calls of people that are being tapped. We can tap some people's telephone numbers, but we can't tap some other people's telephone numbers. So it shows you the ridiculousness of the system, or the security system that we have. You know, we talked about money, why some people don't have money, and they are queuing up. Yes, some people are using money for parties and spraying them in parties, in weddings. So you could look, you could see the challenges that we are facing. It's all, what we need now with the new administration coming in is that we need to change our approach to tackling violence extremism in Nigeria and ensure that we have interventions that will ensure that this issue of kidnapping will be a matter of the past. Because, of course, we know the students, but we also know the kidnappers. They are from a community. Somebody gave back to them. Why is it that they continue to do this and get away with it? Why is it that they are able to spend their money and go home to rest at night? Why is it that they are able to buy food? So there are some conflict entrepreneurs that I imagine from this. Because the banks are not really helping, the government is not putting enough interventions. That is the reason why we're saying that this business is lucrative and people are joining it on a daily basis.
All right. In the last few years, we've seen massive investment in security hardware, equipment, military equipment by the government. And we were expecting that by now, the security agents would have had adequate capacity to handle, mitigate, or avoid this incessant kidnapping that have been going on in parts of the country. I wonder what you make of that. We have so much military hardware, yet we're still having this kidnappings, reported kidnappings here and there, and terrorism activity within the country. How do you explain that?
Any solution to a security challenge must be a people-led solution. The current approach that we adopted is more of, or the major interventions that we're adopting is more of hardware. Hardware has a part to play, and I have no doubt in it. I've just talked about the fact that we need telecommunication systems that could work. But, sir, Mr. Mike, you cannot go and kill a bush rat with an armored tank. There are certain solutions that you need. One of the solutions, as I speak from you, from Kent in the United Kingdom, if I am adopted in my house right now while I'm on TV, I can reassure you before you finish your your program, the people will have been spotted by an helicopter who is flying over them because the police response rate is different. Where are they going to take me to in Kent? So we have what we call the containment strategy. Who is going to kidnap me? Because there are cameras everywhere. Because before you kidnap me, even from the control and command center of the police, they know where you are going. They're just going to be following you to wherever you want to go and stop. That is the problem we have. We have many ungoverned spaces, and we've not done anything to deal with those ungoverned spaces. Every time we want to deal with those ungoverned spaces, we put in politics. Anytime we want to deal with the issue of, I came into Nigeria a few months ago, and even when the government said that people should not be selling SIM card, a woman at the airport who is working at the airport was trying to sell me an unregistered SIM card that I can use that for the few days I was here. So the question then is, the corruption in the system also has made it very, very difficult to be able to tackle it. I am hoping that the new administration will not just look at this from a military or hardware perspective, but will look at it from a people-led strategy. We need to have a strategy and we need to have an implementation plan. As we speak, and you've been doing this for many years, you cannot tell me what is the KPI, which you were talking about, of the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State. Nobody knows it. Nobody knows how it's measured, and the community do not come them to question. So those are the part of the challenge. I throw the question back to the security service because that is the family that I belong to, and I believe that they are not doing enough and they are not fit for purpose. I feel there's a need for a change in the approach that we adopt in dealing with the issue of violence extremism, particularly kidnapping. And once we put in the appropriate interventions that are needed, and I'm hoping that this new president will do, or coming president will do, they will see a drastic reduction in the issue of adoption and kidnapping in Nigeria. Because those people adopted, we should know their name. As I speak to you, all the people that are not working in the United Kingdom are known to the government because in one way or the other, they've engaged with them, they have their fingerprint. So when you say, oh, this person was the person that kidnapped me, his eyes is like this, his nose is like this, in less than 3-4 minutes, they could go and pick him up in his house because they know he's not working, they know where they put him, they know what kind of job they're giving him to be able to support him. I'm hoping that the new president coming in will not just be looking at just cutting off the head of the snake, but actually looking at social interventions and other initiatives that they could embed to ensure that everybody in the country is known. Let's not put politics into it. Let's not say that we need to increase the numbers in the north or increase the numbers in the east so that by the time we have election next time, there will be more numbers in the southeast. So that's the reason with the population census that's coming. Let's do things properly like everybody is doing. Nigeria is a great people. It's a great nation and great people. And this issue of kidnapping is disgracing us as a nation. People like us are embarrassed because we have a lot of people both within and outside the country that could bring in fresh ideas. But when you have a commissioner of police or you have people that are meant to be handling this and people disappear and yet you can't find them and yet you can go to parties at the end of it and you are not losing your job, then you could see why we are unable to solve the problem of kidnapping and adoption in Nigeria.
Now, there's the aspect of persons who tend to undermine the efforts of government because whichever way you want to look at it, we must admit that the government has done a lot with regards to addressing insecurity in the country. But you mentioned earlier that there are conflict entrepreneurs. There are people who seek to undermine the government's efforts, who act as moles in the system. How do we begin to address those people? Because whichever measure the government puts in place, they look at ways of beating it.
Okay, there are two ways to deal with it. The first thing is that we need to deal with the we call them insider threat, which are people that work within the system that are actually the obstacle to the system working. Because, like I mentioned earlier, the government have done a lot to deal with this issue. So dealing with that, I could tell you as someone that worked as a police officer in UK with Kent Police, worked as a secondment police to individual with the Met Police, and also work in the Office for Security and Counterterrorism. I could tell you that foreign money or any kind of money cannot enter my account because on a 6 months basis, my bank statement is reviewed by my superiors. They ask me what I do or which country I'm going to, because it's called security clearance.